Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good lunch break and you're enjoying the forum till now. So the next session, that is the one we are going to have right now, is the keynote under the title, Creating Impact Through Purpose-Led Business. So this presentation is definitely going to inspire many of you, as we have among us Danielle Duell. She's the founder and CEO of People with Purpose, a purpose-led business venture. So through her keynote, she will be delivering to us the idea of creating impact and valuable social outcome through purpose-led business enterprise, and how she was able to achieve all of that through her entrepreneurial journey. I'm really looking forward to this session, and I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to Danielle for her valuable time. And again, apologies for this technical difficulty. Over to you.
Thank you for that lovely intro, Akanksha, and thanks for letting me in so I could share this with everyone. I'm just going to share my screen now. Can you see that okay? Fantastic. Yeah, so thanks for having me today. My name is Danielle and I am the founder and CEO of People with Purpose. And as mentioned in the intro, I'm here today to talk to you about creating impact through purpose-led business. Before we go further though, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which each of us gathers today. Thank you for the hellos from the lady in Perth. I'm actually joining you from Brisbane, which is home of the Nunukal and Yagara people. So People with Purpose is a certified B Corporation. I'm not sure if anyone knows what B Corporation is, but if you're interested in purpose-led business and using business as a force for good, I'd encourage you to look up B Corporation and find out more about that after today. I founded this company just over 7 years ago, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey prior to that. But the reason I founded People with Purpose is because I'm very passionate about the role that business can play in society in solving social problems, and how it's possible to do that in ways that not only create economic value or profit, but also social and environmental value. And I've dedicated the rest of my career to helping other companies do just that. Our particular purpose is to equip business to improve the world. And what we help our customers do is to make profit purposefully. The way we do that is helping them design a purpose for their organisation, then build a strategy that's in alignment with that purpose. And as you can imagine, a company can have an excellent strategy and a really clear and inspiring purpose, but if it doesn't have the leadership capability to execute on that purpose or implement the purpose, it falls short of its potential. So we also provide purposeful leadership development services, and in more recent times, we've also helped companies go on the B Corp certification journey and look at ways to improve their business impact in quantifiable ways. So I just thought I'd share our values with you. I know many of you are early on in your careers, and when you're choosing what sort of company you might like to start as an entrepreneur yourself, or what sort of organisation you'd like to work with, I'd certainly encourage you to check if there's an alignment between your own values and the values of that organisation, and your own purpose and the purpose of that organisation. So in the little bit of time that we have together today, I've been asked to share with you a bit about my entrepreneurial journey, and then what exactly is purposeful entrepreneurship, give you some insight into what purpose-led enterprises are doing and the kinds of impact they're having, and to share some thoughts on how you might build a purposeful entrepreneurial mindset yourself. Hopefully we'll have some time at the end for questions as well. And I welcome questions throughout, so feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to ask something or contribute something as we go along. Okay, let's go. So a little bit about me. My journey, I guess when I was finishing high school, I had a plan in my mind that my life would follow this sort of trajectory of success, which I thought would be quite linear. But I learned, like most people, that I guess anything that we achieve in life is often through the more challenging times and through things that we don't expect. And sometimes the best opportunities are things that we haven't managed to plan for. And one of my favorite quotes, for those of you that like quotes, is one by Louis Pasteur, which is, "Chance favors the prepared mind." And what I've done or tried to do in my adult life is to be prepared, be intentional, be purposeful, so that when chances come along, whether they're good ones or less desirable on the surface, that I've been prepared to make the best of them. Another thing that influenced me and my thinking is a book by Daniel Pink called Drive. And in it, he shared his research on what motivates us. And I guess I was born in the 70s, so that's a fair while ago now. But at that time, the popular belief was the way to motivate people was with carrots and sticks, or rewards and punishments. And what Daniel Pink's book did was illuminate the research that on what truly motivates us is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That most humans really quite enjoy autonomy and have are motivated when they feel like they have that agency to direct their own lives, make their own choices, that we enjoy mastery, that even if we're doing repetitive tasks, that we actually delight in getting better and better at it. Just think about the feeling that some of you might get when you are able to pack the dishwasher that in a way that seems humanly impossible and you get everything in. Even at those sort of mundane levels, we enjoy that mastery. And then the third point that came out in his research, and this is what really got me interested in purpose, was that we yearn to be a part of something bigger than ourselves, to make contributions bigger than ourselves. And so this book came out in 2009, and it certainly was around about that time, or slightly before, that purpose became important to me. And so now I'll share a bit of my entrepreneurial journey to show you exactly what I mean by that. So at the risk of embarrassing myself, this is a photo of me in 1987 when I was school captain of my primary school and with my fellow captains at that school. And so I showed you that squiggly line of my life journey. And when I finished high school, my plan was to go and do an economics degree at the University of Queensland. I was successful in getting into that course. However, I'd been working on Thursday nights and Saturdays in a women's clothing store, and they offered me full-time work when I finished school. And I decided to defer my studies for a year to save some money and buy a better car than the humble one that my parents had gifted me. And so I took that gap year to work in this fashion business, and that gap year actually turned into a gap decade, and I never did my undergraduate degree. In 2001, I had my first son, Ethan, that's him on the left now, so he's now 20, and Elliot 2 years later, and he is now 18. So I spent 10 years in the fashion business, and then I had my first son, and I started doing some part-time work while I was sort of on maternity leave, I guess, looking after my babies. I worked on a number of projects, and one of those was the Storybridge Adventure Climb here in Brisbane. So I helped to get that project off the ground, and that's me on the top of the bridge there before the walkways were on, and before all the safety gear was there. We used to literally climb up the structure of the bridge. It was quite exciting, but not safe for the public, of course. And while I was working on that project, I had the opportunity to start my own business. And I had actually had the opportunity to invest in that company, but I actually chose not to invest in that one. But I did chose to start a different business called River Life. Also based in Brisbane, here in Queensland, on the Brisbane River. And effectively, it's a function centre and an adventure centre where you can go kayaking and rock climbing and abseiling and all sorts of outdoor adventure activities, and host weddings and events in these marquee spaces here. Now, after a year of successful operations, my business partner and I were approached by the local council to see if we would form a joint venture with the local tribe, the Nunakal Yagara people. And we agreed to do that, and we formed another venture called River Life Mirrabooka, which is an interactive Indigenous experience to showcase Aboriginal culture in our region. So they were my first two ventures. Unfortunately, in 2007, my marriage broke down and I had to sell my interest in River Life. So that was a difficult time for me, and I had to think about, well, what do I do next? And I wasn't sure what to do, to be honest. And so I thought, well, this is a good time to go to university, and I was fortunate enough to be let into QUT, and I went and did an MBA there in entrepreneurship and strategy. And while I was doing my MBA, I came up with another idea to create another sort of tourism and leisure precinct, this time called Beach Barbecue, which was to kind of capture the quintessential Queensland lifestyle. So it was going to be beach cricket, beach volleyball, barbecue restaurants and so forth. So the challenge with that business was that I needed a very, I guess, particular piece of land to make it work, and this is right on the banks of the Brisbane River here in my hometown. Unfortunately, I was hitting some roadblocks politically to get access to that land because it was government-owned land. We were trying to negotiate a 100-year lease. And I was advised to wait for a change of government before pushing forward with the idea. So here's some of the plans. You can see we had a nice platform for people to get down onto the river, the beach volleyball and beach cricket fields here, and stadiums and restaurants and so on. So that one I was advised to hold, and that turned out to be fortuitous advice because in 2011, just after that, Brisbane experienced a very bad flood, and all of that land went deep underwater. So I had to pause on my entrepreneurial journey for a little while and find a job. Now, bear in mind, the last time I'd applied for a job was back in that dress shop when I literally went in and said, do you have any work here? So that wasn't too hard, but finding a job, you know, later in my career when I needed a sort of more substantial career to take care of my boys and so on, was a little bit hard. And I don't have time to tell you all of that story today. That's another adventure. But I went looking for companies that I was interested in working in and that were based in my hometown here. And I found a group of companies called the Spices Group. And I reached out to their owner, who is Graham Turner, who is the founder of Flight Centre. Many of you would have heard of that company. It's a global company. Essentially, the Spices Group is his and his wife's portfolio of private companies, and it included luxury hotels and luxury campsites and fine dining restaurants, some cattle farms, day spas, nature refuges and guided walks. So I did a pitch to the owners on why they should employ me to run their companies. Their job wasn't advertised, but effectively 6 months of dialogue and they appointed me as the first CEO. So I did that role for about almost 5 years, and my plan was always to get back to having my own business again. So while I was at Spices, I was very fortunate to win a scholarship to Harvard Business School, and I went and did an executive education program there. It was called the Women's Leadership Forum. That's me winning my scholarship with former Governor General Quentin Bryce and the CEO of St. George Bank, who sponsored it. This is the cohort of women. I did the Women's Leadership Forum at Harvard, and there was about 60 women from over 20 countries. Amazing experience. I got back to Australia and I thought, how do I stay connected with like-minded women like that? And certainly that was actually 10 years ago now. And 10 years ago, there were far fewer women in leadership roles, so it was hard to build a strong network then. So I founded Australian Harvard Women. It's a community for women who have studied at Harvard, And our purpose there is to foster feminine wisdom, impact and opportunity. So that venture's been going for 10 years now, and we have over 160 women around Australia with chapters in the different states. Sometime after I'd won the scholarship to Harvard, I came up with this idea in my mind, people with purpose. I was thinking about, what do I want to do next? What is my next business venture? And I knew that I do my best work when I'm working with passionate people on purposeful projects. And so this idea, people with purpose, came in my head. I Googled that, and believe it or not, the web URL was available. So clearly that was a sign from the universe that I was on the right track. And I founded this company in 2007, 2014, 7 years ago. I'd like to share with you now what I've learned about purposeful entrepreneurship. So that's sort of my journey. But in my opinion and experience, purposeful entrepreneurship is about applying the skills and the strategies of an entrepreneur to create businesses that generate not just economic value, but they generate that economic value in ways that simultaneously create value for society and the environment. So it's about being an entrepreneur, but one that wants to make a positive impact, not just a profit. It's about making profit purposefully. And many of you would have heard of Peter Drucker. He's a fairly popular management academic. He once said that profit is not the explanation or cause or rationale of business. It's not the purpose of business. Having a profit is just proof that your business model is working. So, and that's an interesting idea in itself. Unfortunately, as you would be aware, in many instances, performance has become the purpose of the organisation, or profit has become the purpose of the organisation. But it's, as we've seen, particularly during the pandemic that we've all lived through and are still living through, that the relationship between a sustainable economy and a sustainable society is interdependent. And therefore, we cannot design systems for economics and systems for society without acknowledging those connections and respecting them. And believe it or not, it's now over 50 years since Milton Friedman became famous for arguing that the primary mission of a company or a corporation is to maximize shareholder value. So we're living in very exciting times, and I'm very excited that every day I get to advance the kind of thinking where we're starting to shift to a more purpose-led economy. And and in the World Economic Forum in last year, we certainly saw them talking about stakeholder capitalism. So that's really what that is. It's about designing your business to create value for all your stakeholders, not just your shareholders. We're seeing the B Corp movement gain momentum. Businesses looking to be best for the world, not just best in the world. We're seeing, people of influence like the CEO and chair of BlackRock, which is the world's largest investment company, talking about purpose being the ultimate engine of long-term profitability, that they won't invest in companies unless they can show how their organisation will create value for society and not harm. So this is exciting because this is becoming the dominant mindset. It's not just the not-for-profit sector talking about doing good. This is the for-profit sector talking about doing good. And fortunately, the research is catching up as well to show that there is a good business case for being a purpose-led business, not just a good social case. So some of you may know that that trust is something that is in short supply around the world. And here in my country, here in Australia, half the population believe that capitalism does more harm than good. The public expects organisations to create social value, that they're starting to shop with their conscience and with their values. They expect business to solve social problems. And companies that have a strong sense of purpose are showing that they have higher staff engagement. And there's so many benefits of high staff engagement. Unfortunately, approximately 2/3 of people report and have reported for year after year after year that they're unfulfilled at work. So being a purpose-led business is a wonderful opportunity to engage the employees, to attract like-minded employees to business, and that yields many, many, many business benefits as well. And I guess, you know, one of the things that I've talked about is about making profit purposefully, and there's numerous sources of research that show that purpose-led companies are outperforming the market. Sadly, though, whilst many business leaders that I work with and that the research has found, while many business leaders now are acknowledging the important role that purpose has to play and the benefits it brings to business, less than half of them are actually using their purpose to guide their operations and their decision making. And that only contributes to the distrust and the disillusionment and the lack of workforce fulfillment. So for me, that drives me. Like, how can I help bridge that gap? How can I make it easier for more leaders and more businesses to be purposeful and to create a positive impact? And one of the key ways to bridge that gap is with a purpose-led strategy. So not just a clear purpose, but a strategy to deliver on that purpose. So what I'd like to share with you now is some of the essential elements of a purpose-led strategy, so that those of you who have a business or are looking to work for a business or are thinking of starting one day, you can understand some of the core elements of a purpose-led business and a strategy to make it so. So no surprises. The first element is a clear sense of purpose, and then a vision, some objectives that align with the purpose and the vision, then strategies to deliver on that vision, and KPIs or measures to track your progress. And underpinning the strategy at all times should be your organisation's values. So in a little bit more detail, what is a purpose? A purpose is a statement around why the organisation exists and what impact it wants to make. All right, so it should be all about the why. A vision is a picture in words of what the future will look like if we fulfil our purpose. So that requires imagination. How could the world be different? How could the world be better if we delivered on our purpose? And companies can have a 1-year vision, a 5-year vision, a 10-year vision, and a 100-year vision. And that can be updated from time to time. Typically, though, the purpose will endure over time. The values of a company are simply the principles that you need to adopt to support the purpose and reflect the desired identity that you want for your team and your organisation, that mirror the intentions that you've set. The objectives are like the goals. So what are the key factors that will drive success in achieving our purpose? What are the things we really need to do well and get right? And then under those objectives, set the strategies. So what are the most important initiatives we need to put in place to achieve the objectives that will help us realise our purpose? And finally, what are the measures? What are the KPIs we will use to track our progress and success? And it's very important to track progress as well, not just what we call the lag indicators. It's the things that, the lead indicators, the things that we do in the short term before the long-term impact shows up. Okay, just got a few things going in the chat. I might just, thank you for the nice feedback, Megan and Emily. I won't scroll down all of that just yet. So let's have a look at some companies that have implemented a purpose and the types of industries it's happening in, the types of impact that they want to make, and a little bit more about what makes a good purpose. So as I said, the purpose is the why. It's a statement that describes why we exist and the impact we want to make. Often, the word purpose and mission and vision are used interchangeably, but they are different things. And I've put this little description together just to try and simplify it. Like, the purpose is the why, the vision is the what, and the mission is the how. So the purpose is why we exist. The vision is what the future will look like when we fulfill our purpose. And the mission is how we do things to contribute to our purpose. So the mission can change because as you progress towards your purpose, what you need to do might need to change. So for example, our purpose is to equip business to improve the world. Now, how we do that right now is through purpose-led strategy and purposeful leadership development. In the very early days, one of the things I did most of was go around and talk to boards of companies on the business case for purpose. I actually had to convince the leaders of companies that it made good business sense to be a purpose-led business. Now we don't do that anymore because of all the reasons I've shared already, but because most boards and executive teams understand that being a purpose-led business is really the only pathway to a sustainable business. And I'm not talking just about sustainable from an environmentally sustainable point of view there. I'm talking about as in continuity of business and license to operate. So I'm hoping that in years to come, we won't be spending so much time in helping companies develop purpose-led strategies, but actually spending more of our time helping them measure the impact of their strategies and look for ways to improve it. And that purpose-led strategy just becomes as ubiquitous as having a profit and loss statement, that every company has a purpose-led strategy. So that's my goal for when I retire or go part-time in 2040, that's the business as usual. So here's an example of a company that is using a purpose, a vision, and a mission. Sometimes it's good to see an example. So this is ING. Many of you would have heard of them. Some of you might bank with them. They're actually a bank, okay? And that's how they deliver on their purpose. But that's not why they exist. They don't exist to be a bank. They exist to empower people to stay a step ahead in life and in business. And as if any of you are, watching the banking industry and finance industry, you can see how much that industry is changing. And so if they were to fixate on just being a bank, that actually wouldn't be good business either. But focusing on empowering people to stay a step ahead in life and in business is something that will be valuable for the rest of time. So not a bad example. Now, what makes a great purpose? Well, it needs to be action-oriented and impact-oriented, and you can talk about your stakeholders in it, but you don't have to. And I'm going to share a few examples with you. So, and these are fairly famous ones, so hopefully you'll know. So Tesla, okay, they're a electric car company. They don't talk about cars though, do they? Why they exist is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. OzHarvest, that's an Australian company that redistributes food waste to the homeless, and their purpose is to nourish our country. Can you guess which company this purpose belongs to? And so this is Disney, and their purpose is to make people happy. And if we were all in a room together and I could see everyone's faces, generally when I show this purpose, people do smile. So they've got some positive association or happy association with the brand. Flight Centre, so a travel company, whose purpose is to open up the world for those who want to see. And certainly when they were founded over 30 years ago, the world wasn't very open, and they have led the way in negotiating airline routes and travel itineraries and so on. And even now in times of restriction, championing ways to open up the world safely, so we can hopefully go and see the world again and see our family and friends and colleagues. IKEA. Oh, and here's one I love. So there's a few examples of purpose in business. And when companies are thinking about what their purpose might be, often the clues to what a good purpose could be, and if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to start a company, a great place to start might be to think about what kind of value do we create and for whom, because a purpose is all about the impact that you want to make. So this is a model that I built a couple of years ago based on the Sustainable Development Goals and an article by some Harvard authors called The Elements of Value. And so when we think about how we create value, you know, a few decades ago, we were thinking more about functional value, quality and price. So, you know, the higher quality something was, the more we would be prepared to pay for it. And in more contemporary times, we've also come to value convenience. Can I get it delivered to my door, and so on. But as you can see from this model, there's many types of value that we can create, and the best businesses look to create value in ways that are both functional, emotional, and social. So if you're thinking about starting a business or you're working in a company now and in a leadership role, then have a think about what types of value that you create, and perhaps then what other value you might be able to create for your stakeholders that would make you an even more purposeful business. And one thing I've come to learn is that as long as you're creating value for your stakeholders in a business or an enterprise, as long as you're creating value, then you're able to create revenue. When you stop creating value, then your ability to generate revenue, to charge for what you do, clearly diminishes. So here's a couple of, well, not a couple, here's a few examples of other organisations that we've worked with where we've helped them to design a purpose. So I'll give you a moment to read over that list, and you can see it's quite diverse, that many industries are looking to become purpose-led, and there's really opportunities for every business and every industry to improve their operations and to improve their impact. And if they can come up with a purpose that's bigger than making profit, then you really need that intention first to then be able to design the strategy and to engage the people in that business to create value in ways that are, you know, sustainable, and as I said, social value and environmental value, as well as economic value. So what about you? How might you build a purposeful entrepreneurial mindset? In the work that my team and I have done with leaders over the past 7+ years, we've paid particular attention to the kinds of leaders that are most purposeful, and we've identified some common principles in the way that they lead, and it's my pleasure to be able to share those with you today. But first of all, you might be wondering, well, why? You know, some of you are probably still skeptical. Why would I want to be interested in being a purposeful leader? Why would I want to be a part of a purpose-led business? Well, here's some of the reasons why. As I said, it is about legitimacy these days, that there's an expectation that to maintain your license to operate, you need to take care of all of your stakeholders. It's not okay to have a successful manufacturing company and to dump all of your waste into the local waterways. It's not okay to have a successful fashion brand and to exploit the workers who are manufacturing or sewing your garments, so on. So it's very important to have a clear, to maintain your legitimacy as a business, to have a clear sense of purpose and to act in alignment with that. It certainly helps to attract and motivate and retain talent, you know, particularly, as many of you would know, you know, as every generation starts to enter the workforce, becoming more and more concerned about choosing purposeful careers, not just what my generation often did was follow in our parents' footsteps or just chase the big money or the secure career paths. Those sort of expectations are shifting or have shifted. It helps to drive strong customer relationships and strong stakeholder relationships with suppliers and partners. And it helps to improve employee psychological well-being. As we all know, mental health is a very important factor for all of us, particularly in societies like Australia, where it is a relatively, whilst there's a lot of variety and disadvantage in parts, we are largely a very abundant society, and it's our mental well-being that is sometimes under most threat, as opposed to our physical well-being. It helps to improve business performance, both in the short term and long term. And what's incredibly useful is that having a clear sense of purpose helps provide focus for decision making for leaders. And as any of you who are leading anything, whether it's a business, a club, a sporting team, a family, having a clear sense of purpose can be the first filter for all of your decision making, because you can ask yourself, okay, given the scenario that we're dealing with here, what are our options? And which of those options will lead us closer to our purpose? And which of those options might lead us further away? So having a purpose is a wonderful tool for, I guess, finding simplicity in complex and uncertain environments. So there's some of the reasons why many leaders are choosing to pursue a purposeful leadership mentality and purpose-led business methodology, but not everyone sees things that way. And I read this book a couple of years ago, actually, by Raj Sisodia and Michael Gelb, and in it they published a number of beliefs that still exist in the business world today. So I'll give you a moment to absorb some of those. So for someone like me, those sort of beliefs really jar, but it also inspires me to try and, I guess, educate and equip leaders to lead another way. And so now I'd like to share with you our purposeful leader model. And I've built it based on Simon Sinek's golden circle of the why, the what, and the how. If any of you have seen his TED Talk, starts with why, you might be familiar with that diagram. So why, what, and how. So if we think about leaders using this iceberg mentality, or iceberg metaphor, with icebergs, what you see above the surface is quite small compared to what's below the surface. So when you think about leaders that you know, or the leader that you are, what we see is the way a leader behaves. But what informs their behaviour is their perceptions of the situation. And their perceptions are informed by their beliefs and what they believe to be true or not true. So, for example, if I hold a belief that anyone under 25 is lazy, then if I saw one of my employees who fit that age group come in late, I might automatically assume that they're late because they're lazy. And so then my reaction to them would perhaps be quite harsh and abrupt. However, if I held a different belief that all workers are generally appreciative of the opportunity to work and want to do their best and want to be in an environment where they can bring their best to work, if someone turned up late, my first question might be to ask them, why are you late? Is everything okay? So that's just a simplistic example to show you how our beliefs shape our perceptions, and our perceptions influence our behaviours or the way we respond. So back to the model. Why? What have we noticed about purposeful leaders? What's driving them? Why do they lead that way? And what we've learned is that they lead that way because they want to improve their world, whether that's the world of agriculture, or the world of access to drinking water, or the world at large, like me, using business to improve the world in general. Purposeful leaders, whatever the context is, whatever world they're leading in, they want to make it better. And they do that by adopting 4 key principles. And this is where I'll go into a little bit more detail now. They have imagination. They take an integrated view of the world. They have an impact orientation, and they consider individuals when they make decisions. So let's go into it in more detail. And might I just say that many leaders have one or two or three of these, or act from one or two or three of these principles, but purposeful leaders adopt all four of them in the way that they operate. So imagination. Purposeful leaders can envision the world being better, and they are inspired to make it happen. So here's an example for you. Elon Musk, his personal purpose is to make life interplanetary. And few would argue that, that his imagination is not something. It certainly is. Now, I'm not saying he's a purposeful leader all in entirety, but I certainly think he's a great example of a leader with imagination. He certainly can imagine the world being better. Oops. Purposeful leaders take an integrated worldview. So they recognise that we're part of a system and that you can't do something in one part of the system without it having an impact elsewhere. So an example of that is Patagonia. I'm not sure if you know that brand, but they're an outdoor adventure clothing brand. And they publish the environmental footprint of all of their products. They run advertisements saying, do not buy this jacket, with their best-selling jacket. And they go on to say how much water and what the carbon footprint is of that jacket. And the message is, if you don't need it, don't buy it. So they're all about responsible consumerism, and they use their efforts to advocate for environmental sustainability. Purposeful leaders have an impact orientation. So they're not just dreamers. They don't just have imagination. They're looking to make an impact. And the kind of impact that they're looking to make is not just a financial impact or a status impact. They're looking to create a social and environmental impact as well. So really, again, taking that imagination with the integrated worldview to create an integrated impact. And a great example, in my opinion, is the Prime Minister in New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, who was one of the first global leaders to come out and talk about the societal well-being of their country and not just the economic well-being. And finally, the fourth principle that purposeful leaders demonstrate is consideration for individuals. So whilst they have a big picture view, while they have, you know, quite vivid imaginations and ambitions on how the world can be better, they take the time to think about the impact that their decisions and their work and their enterprises will have on the individuals. And where they can, they will make sincere efforts to create value for all of the stakeholders affected by their organisations. And I've got two examples here. This is an Australian example again. Juliet Wright created a company that connects people in need with people who have donations to share. And this here is Ronnie Hahn. She was the founder of OzHarvest, that business I mentioned earlier, that connects food waste with homeless people. So that's the purposeful leader model. And so just to sum up those four principles, that purposeful leaders can imagine things to be better and are driven to make it so. They take a holistic view and are mindful of the consequences of their actions and inherent in the systems that they lead. They seek to create positive and sustainable impact for all stakeholders. And before they act, they empathise with the individuals who may be affected by their choices. So we now have just under 10 minutes for questions and comments. So I'll open up the chat, and I'm not sure, Akanksha, the participants able to speak if they want to and unmute? Are we set up for that too?
Actually, I think we can give them the access to speak if they want to, but we already have few questions on the chat.
Okay, great. Well, would you be happy to navigate the chat for me, and I'll just
definitely. Yes. So the first question is, how often the mission should be changed?
Okay, well, I'm assuming that you understand the difference between purpose and mission. So in my opinion, unless a company has been created for a short-term project, say for example, the Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast a few years ago, then the purpose should be able to endure in perpetuity, like for generations to come. However, the mission could change. So sometimes I use the example of Blockbuster Video. So they were a video rental company and they went out of existence, even though they had the opportunity to purchase Netflix in its early days. They totally missed the opportunity for people to want to consume streamed content at home. And I wonder if the leaders at Blockbuster had have thought about their purpose and not just what they did, not just their mission of how they made their money, basically off video rental and in particular late fees. If they had thought about why they existed, and perhaps an appropriate purpose for them would have been to entertain people at home, then they would have been more attuned to the opportunity to purchase Netflix and not been so rigid about hanging on to their video rental revenues and late fees so hard. So a mission really needs to change as often as the ways that you create value for your stakeholders changes. So stakeholders or the customers of Blockbuster no longer wanted to, or not enough of them anyway, wanted to rent videos at home and hire them. They wanted to stream at home, and so that would have been a cue to change mission. Now, changes to the way you create value can be impacted by changes in technology as new technologies become available, as new products become available, as government policies change, as competitors change, and so on. So there's not a one-size-fits-all answer to that question, but thank you for the question.
All right. So the next question is People with Purpose operating as a social enterprise?
That's a really good question. There's many definitions to social enterprise. So we don't fit all of the criteria of a social enterprise, but the sole reason we are a for-profit company, and our purpose is, the whole reason we exist is to equip business to improve the world. So, and the way that the impact that we make, we measure that by how many businesses have we equipped and how many leaders have we equipped. So we have in our company reporting, we have an impact and performance dashboard. So the impact talks about how the equipping, how many businesses and leaders have we equipped. So in some regards, we are, well, in many regards, I would say we're a purposeful enterprise, but we do not meet all of the criteria for a social enterprise. And the criteria for a social enterprise is that, or some definitions of it are that you reinvest your profits into that cause. So we don't yet reinvest all of our profits back into the cause of equipping business to improve the world. We certainly invest a lot of money into that, and we also provide, discounted and pro bono services to some organisations that can't afford to engage us in a full sense. But the I guess short answer to the question, are we a social enterprise, is yes and no. It depends on what definition you use.
Right. Yeah, we just have, I guess, a minute or so. So I'll take two questions together. So there's a question. So your journey is actually, this is my question as well. So your journey is really inspiring, and you put your personal story so beautifully in front of all of us. But it makes me wonder that how, like, if your experience as a woman in the field create any roadblocks, if any, and how you motivated yourself to create something for the society and create social change when you yourself were facing challenges. And that can be added with the other question, which has asked that how you manage to balance your family and job as a businesswoman.
Oh, lots and lots in that question. So I would say that being a woman hasn't hindered me. It has inspired me. because I guess the fact that I had 2 very young children when I became a single mother drove me to ensure that I kept going and didn't give up, so that I could provide a good life for them and a good example to them. So in that way, being a woman actually and a mother helped me. I was fortunate that that first business I worked in for 10 years, that fashion company, was led by women, and I went on to become the second in charge there. So it was a really great early experience where that was my normal, that women did lead. And then I have always pursued opportunities where it didn't matter what my gender was. That being said, I have, like unfortunately most women, been subjected to sexism and inappropriate behaviour, but I have always, I guess, addressed that. You know, in my younger years, I probably ignored it more. I didn't have the words and the courage, but I don't feel it's held me back. And in terms of how have I managed my career, I must say when my youngest son finished high school last year, I literally breathed a deep sigh of relief, because it was a giant juggling act. I guess I just always worked around them and was well supported by my parents in terms of babysitting and so on when they were younger. But I also, you know, I guess was very organised and would work very hard after they went to bed and so on when they were younger. Now I go to bed before them, so it's a bit different. So I think one thing is that, you know, being a parent, the really, really active years when they're dependent on you, it seems like forever when you're in the middle of it, but they go by really quickly. And I have no regrets about designing my career around my children, and now, you know, now that they're more independent, you know, I'm really free to, I guess, really pursue the purpose of my business even more, and hopefully have an even bigger impact.
All right. Okay, then. Thank you, Danielle, for the amazing answers, and thanks for being so genuine about your story. And it's honestly really very inspiring. Unfortunately, we just have over just a minute for the next session to start, so we need to wrap up here today. But yeah, definitely, I'm keen to keep in touch with you to know more, and I'm sure our attendees would love that as well. So yeah, if you have maybe your LinkedIn ID or something, you can pop it into the chat. Or
yes, yeah. But no, that's not it. That's the Zoom link. I will, yeah, I will do that. And also, if anyone is interested in internship opportunities, we do have a few throughout each year, so you could email my team. But I'll jump out of that now and find my LinkedIn profile for you. So
yeah, that's great.
Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the session. I'd love to get a copy of the chat, if that's all right, Akanksha, so I can read it.
Yeah.
But thank you all, and I wish you every success. And please, please choose to be a purposeful leader. The world needs more of us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.